Stop looking at the theatrics of the government shutdown. Stop listening to the pundits talking about bipartisan hopes or temporary continuing resolutions. Those are hallucinations designed to keep the markets calm while the ship sinks. If you want to know if the United States government will function tomorrow or next week, you only need to look at two numbers that were finalized this afternoon: 218 and 214. That is the only data set that matters. Everything else is noise. In the last 6 hours, a mathematical event occurred on the floor of the House of Representatives that has effectively liquidated the speakership of Mike Johnson and guaranteed that the fiscal machinery of the United States remains paralyzed. While the cameras were focused on the closed national parks and the furlough notices going out to federal workers, the real structural fracture happened when Speaker Johnson performed a ceremonial duty that sealed his own fate. He administered the oath of office to Christian Menifee, a Democrat from Texas who won a special election. This was not a polite tradition, it was the tightening of a noose. Before this afternoon, the Republican majority had a breathing room of mere inches. Now that breathing room has vanished into a vacuum, the balance of power is now 218 Republicans against 214 Democrats. This is not just a slim majority, this is a mathematical impossibility. It means that Speaker Johnson can only afford to lose one single vote from his own party to pass any legislation, including the bill to reopen the government. If 2 members of the Freedom Caucus defect, or if 2 members are sick, or if 2 members simply decide to burn the House down, then the bill fails. The Speaker has zero margin for error. In the world of physics, when your tolerance for error hits zero, structural failure is not a possibility. It is a guarantee. You might be thinking that surely in a time of crisis, the two parties will find a middle ground. That is the thinking of a naive observer who believes in the old world. In the world of 2026, there is no middle ground. There is only leverage and liquidation. The Democrats have made their position distinct and lethal. Led by Hakeem Jeffries, they have signaled a total refusal to rescue Speaker Johnson. They will not provide the votes to cross the aisle. They will not provide a safety net. The reason is not just budget line items, it is blood. The killing of Alex Pretty, a 37-year-old nurse in Minneapolis by federal agents during a raid, has converted the budget negotiation into a kinetic conflict. The Democratic base is enraged. They are demanding reforms to immigration and customs enforcement that the Republican hardliners will never accept. This makes the vote radioactive. No Democrat can vote for a funding bill that does not address this event without facing political liquidation from their own voters. So the bridge across the aisle has been detonated. Johnson is alone on an island with a shrinking population. But the mathematics of the House floor is only the mechanism of failure. The cause of failure comes from a different source entirely. It comes from a command issued remotely that has stripped Speaker Johnson of his autonomy. While Johnson was trying to count votes this afternoon, President Donald Trump issued a direct directive on Truth Social. His message was binary and absolute, no changes. He demanded that the House pass the bill without any of the compromises the Senate is asking for. This is a remote executive override of the legislative branch. By issuing this order, Trump has effectively placed Mike Johnson in a vice grip. If Johnson tries to negotiate with the Senate to open the government, he defies the leader of his party and faces an immediate motion to vacate. If he obeys the order and refuses to change a single line of the bill, he loses every Democrat and the moderate Republicans who are terrified of a prolonged shutdown. He is checkmated. The order. No changes is not a strategy for victory. It is a strategy for chaos. It is designed to break the system, not to fix it. This evening, the reality of this gridlock began to settle in over Capitol Hill. The illusion that this would be a short weekend shutdown has evaporated. The Senate deal, which many hoped would slide through the House, has been rejected by the reality of the vote count. The Rules Committee meeting turned into a battlefield where the factions entrenched themselves further. We are no longer looking at a pause in government funding. We are looking at a seizure of the sovereign entity. When you look at the markets, you see a different story. You see the Dow Jones rising over 500 points this afternoon. You see a dead cat bounce fueled by the delusion that the Federal Reserve will save everyone. The market is betting on the nomination of Kevin Warsh as the next Fed chair, believing that he will print enough money to paper over these structural cracks. This is the definition of cognitive dissonance. The market is looking at the monetary spigot while ignoring the fact that the fiscal pipes have burst. Kevin Warsh can lower interest rates to zero. He can restart quantitative easing until the balance sheet swells to $20 trillion. But the Federal Reserve cannot pass a budget. The Federal Reserve cannot authorize the payment of TSA agents. The Federal Reserve cannot deploy Border Patrol officers. The Federal Reserve cannot perform the basic functions of governance. If the House of Representatives cannot produce 218 votes, the government remains closed. And as the government remains closed, the credit rating of the United States sovereign debt begins to rot. We are witnessing the weaponization of parliamentary procedure. The swearing in of Christian Menifee was the final variable in an equation that equals zero. Zero governance, zero compromise, zero liquidity for the federal workforce. The hardliners in the Freedom Caucus who have been demanding a shutdown to force border reforms now have the mathematical leverage to keep it shut indefinitely. They know that Johnson cannot pass a bill without them, and they know that Johnson cannot pass a bill with them if it satisfies the Senate. The Venn diagram of a solution is two circles that do not touch. This is not an accident. This is a stress test of the American institutional architecture, and the architecture is failing. The no changes order from Trump is a signal that the disruption is the goal. By forcing a stalemate, the executive branch in waiting is demonstrating that the current legislative configuration is obsolete. They are breaking the bone to reset it. But for you, the observer, this means pain. It means that the services you rely on, the contracts that support the economy and the stability of the dollar, are currently hostage to a margin of one single vote. The intricate dance of corruption and power is also visible in the background of this paralysis. While the politicians fight over pennies in the budget, huge sums of capital are moving in the dark. The revelations regarding the $500 million injection into the Trump family crypto project by United Arab Emirates interests just days before the inauguration show where the real attention lies. The political class is distracted by the shutdown theater, while the ownership class is securing assets and policy favors. But even that corruption requires a functioning government to deliver the goods. If the government is closed, the export licenses for those AI chips cannot be processed. The machine must run for the grift to work. So we have a paradox. The corruption requires the government to open, the ideology requires the government to close, and the mathematics makes it impossible for the government to move. Mike Johnson is trapped in the center of this triangle. He is a man with a gavel but no power. He counts to 218 in his sleep, but when he wakes up, the number is not there. The impact of this will be felt in the coming days as the shutdown extends. The gloss of the short weekend break is gone. We are entering the phase of structural degradation. Air travel will slow down as unpaid controllers call in sick. Ports will clog as customs inspectors vanish. Data releases will stop. The blindfold will be put on the market. And all of this because the denominator changed by one integer this afternoon. Do not listen to the press secretary telling you that talks are productive. Do not listen to the Senate Majority Leader telling you that a deal is close. Look at the board. Look at the names. Look at the count. 218 Republicans, 214 Democrats, one order from Mar-a-Lago saying no changes, one dead protester named Alex Preddy making compromise impossible. This is not a negotiation. This is a hostage situation where the hostage is the concept of a functioning federal government. The ransom is total capitulation, which neither side can afford to give. Therefore, the hostage remains bound. The belief that the United States government is a permanent, unshakable entity is a bias born of a century of stability. But stability is not a law of physics. It is a condition maintained by consensus. When the consensus breaks, the stability evaporates. We are watching the evaporation process in real time. The water is boiling off, and soon the pot will be dry. You need to ask yourself a question tonight. How much of your life depends on the federal government functioning normally tomorrow? Do you have contracts with federal agencies? Do you rely on federal data for your trading? Do you hold assets that are priced based on the assumption of a risk-free rate provided by the U.S. Treasury? If the answer is yes, you are exposed to a risk that you cannot hedge. The death of mathematics at Capitol Hill is not a metaphor. It is a literal description of a legislature that can no longer perform the basic arithmetic required to exist. When a body cannot count to a majority, it ceases to be a body. It becomes a collection of warring cells attacking the host. We are watching an autoimmune disease consume the Capitol. So as you watch the markets open tomorrow and you see the algorithms chasing the liquidity promised by Kevin Warsh, remember that liquidity cannot fix a broken gear. Money cannot fix a broken vote. The system is jammed, the leverage is maxed out, and the man holding the gavel has been stripped of his authority by a post on a social media network and a swearing-in ceremony that sealed his doom. This is the State of the Union in 2026, a deadlock tight as a tomb, a math problem with no solution, a government that is closed for business not because of a lack of money, but because of a surplus of rage. Do not look away. Do not pretend this will resolve itself by magic. The numbers do not lie. And right now, the numbers say that the system is broken. 218, 214. Memorize those numbers. They are the coordinates of the crash. You have been warned. The mathematics of survival has changed. Adjust your position accordingly. If you are betting on a quick resolution, you are betting against gravity. The weight of the conflict is too heavy, and the support structure is too weak. The collapse is the only logical outcome. What is your exposure to this paralysis? If the government checks stop coming for a month, do you survive? If the regulatory approvals you need are frozen for a quarter, does your business fail? Do not tell me you are diversified. Diversification does not protect you from systemic failure. Diversification does not protect you when the referee leaves the field and the game turns into a riot. Write down the number of weeks you can survive without a functioning federal government. Write it down on a piece of paper. If that number is 0, you are already a casualty, you just haven't fallen yet. Stop hoping for a political savior. Look at the math. The math says you are on your own. This is the reality. The only thing that matters is the count, and the count is dead. The vote is dead. The deal is dead. Welcome to the era of the frozen state.